Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mental Insights Podcast. This is your host, Brendan.cutuli, and we are here today for episode number 24. This week has definitely faced its challenges. Some podcast episodes ended up being canceled and rescheduled, so for this week I do not have any upcoming interviews to share with you all, which some of you have seen thus far. But I want to provide this episode to let you all get a better understanding of who I am, who the host of the Mental Insights podcast is, and give you a glimpse into why these topics are so important within my own life, and also what really drove me to be the person that I am today, and why I'm so passionate about helping others and leading others to helpful resources and resources that will benefit their own life. So I'd just love to thank you all for listening to the Mental Insights podcast. Please like, subscribe, review, comment. Let me know what you guys think of the interviews thus far. Let me know who you'd like to have on as a guest and so forth. I really want to hear from you all and hear what you guys think. To start off, I just want to let you all know that everybody starts somewhere, and you don't necessarily need to judge someone based on where they begun and where they really went through their own transitions. It's all about who a person is today and how they are actively trying to change themselves for the better. When I grew up in a great environment. I have a great family that allowed me to be the person that I am today, allowed me to grow and learn from their own experiences, and they guided me along the way to better understand who I need to be. When I grew up, I don't really think I knew my own aspirations, my own goals. The only thing that I truly was focused on was sports, mainly soccer and basketball. When I grew up, I was playing sports full time. I was playing soccer and basketball at every waking moment that I possibly could, hanging out with friends, being outside, being with family. It was definitely a childhood that was easier than most. Then the transition of having your own responsibilities and learning about different things within the human body, within the availability of substances, within relationships. There's many things that play a factor when one becomes a teenager, when one becomes available to a lot of these resources. When I really began my transition into a darker period of my life, I believe I was about 11 to 12 years old. I experienced a trauma that definitely caused some harm, some behavioral changes, some emotional responses that were definitely led for many years throughout my life. After this experience, I didn't necessarily really think or acknowledge what happened, and I really went through the course of about 6 years of some debilitating times that I was not truly aware of. When I was about 12 to 13 is really when I started to transition into the person that I never did want to become and never do want to become. I began to use substances. I began originally I was just smoking weed and drinking alcohol with friends as, the first trials to, obviously be the cool kid doing it, but as well, it was a great suppressor to a lot of the pain that I was facing, whether it was due to my trauma, whether it was due to the relationships that I had, or the mindset that I had that was just dark and unhealthy. I really began to learn that substances were powerful beyond measure throughout, those first 2 years, and that's when it really led towards using pills, towards learning that there are drugs that provide much more relief within any type of anxiety or dark thinking. Pills really became a good source of relief for myself because they made me feel open, free. They made me feel like I just solved all of my problems. Throughout a lot of this, I was being very harmful towards people around me. I was not treating people correctly. I was stealing from others. I was lying. It was a time where I not only wasn't taking care of myself, but I was treating others in a rash and harmful behavior that definitely caused pain within others' lives as well. As I was going throughout this process, I definitely became aware of, my high use of these substances and, abusing others, but I never really came to terms that it was something that was harming anyone. I didn't think I was harming myself. I thought I was fixing a lot of my problems that I thought I had. And I didn't really care to think of anyone else besides myself. When you go through a time of depression or when you go through a time of trauma, you never really think anywhere past yourself, which is ironic because you never think of helping yourself. You never think of caring for yourself. It's only about the harm that you're able to displace upon other people through harming yourself. It's definitely a tough predicament to be in, but the only true answer is to experience it and learn from one of these experiences because it offers a lot of growth and it offers the ability to change your future and become self-aware of your behaviors and actions in order to not succumb to this negative actions or thoughts within the future. As I was going throughout this, there was definitely a subconscious moment that I think really changed the course of my life. When I was in 8th grade, I actually was brought to the attention that there was private schools through my good friend Eduardo Palmieri. So shout out to Eduardo. He was my best friend growing up and offered, one of the best resources that definitely could have been brought to my attention. And I'm forever grateful for him coming to me and sharing that he was going to Notre Dame High School, and that offered my perspective to see that private school was a possible opportunity for myself. Unfortunately, I actually didn't follow his footsteps in going to Notre Dame, surprisingly, because he was my best friend throughout my whole childhood, and you would have assumed that I was going to Notre Dame due to him recommending Notre Dame and as well him being my best friend. But I ended up evaluating other private schools, and one being Xavier High School, which is the high school that I did end up going to for my 4 years of high school. Xavier was definitely one of the best choices that I could have made for my whole career, life, and so forth. It was definitely one of the most transformative 4 years. I definitely grew a lot. I definitely overcame a lot, and it was a learning experience in and of itself. The first 2 years, I still was similar to my old behaviors. I learned how to create an image for people to look at and not necessarily understand, and try to, fake it till you make it. I was still using substances for the first 2 years. I was still abusing pills. I wasn't really treating a lot of people around me correctly. And ended up, two circumstances which really brought and shed light to my own life and what I was doing. One being that I got suspended from high school, which was definitely an eye-opening experience. I got kicked off the soccer team as well, which definitely was something to sit down and reflect about and understand my own consequences. And the other was a personal conversation with my parents, which led to a really big realization of my problem with substances and how I need to move forward. I began to realize that my abuse of substances was not only affecting myself but affecting others. I began to learn that my actions were not only responsible just for myself, but they impacted a lot of people around me, which was a great conversation and a great lesson to have. I've learned a lot throughout my short childhood, and it was definitely one that I would not give up. I enjoyed every moment of it, the triumphant times of, winning state cup soccer championships, to the darkest times of, being pulled over, of being, in a tough predicament with parents or administration of schools. There's highs and lows, and I definitely appreciate them all. Throughout my next 2 years of high school was really when the growth began for myself. I started to learn that my relationships were really important, that family was the utmost importance within my own life. I really started to gain a good perspective of who I was and who I wanted to become. When I was a senior in high school, at my last year at Xavier High School, there was an opportunity to do senior service in Guatemala, and the opportunity was to build 2 homes and feed some local families throughout the area. I spent a week in Guatemala and the surrounding areas to travel and communicate with others, to better understand the culture and what the locals could really benefit from in terms of what work we could do, what resources we could bring to them, and so forth. The week was one of the most beneficial trips and experiences I've had. Throughout the week, I believe it was coming to the last day or two, we were all speaking about, what we could do to move forward. And the one opportunity was to help raise money because the school that we were associated with, which is Kairos Christian School in Ciudad Vieja, Guatemala, and they were looking to find new property and build another school for a larger community within the same location. They wanted to provide more schooling to children greater than their max capacity that they had, which I believe was 82. So with that information, I went back to Xavier and spearheaded a project on my own, which was raising about $4,000 for Kairos Christian School. This was through different approaches of donations, of selling candy and food, and as well having a volleyball tournament for Xavier and Mercy High School on a weekend day where a lot of my good friends and classmates came to have some food, to play volleyball, and enjoy some time together in order to help bring change within the communities of Guatemala and help provide education for future children. It was definitely such a great learning experience and such an insightful time for myself because I learned how to put a lot of weight on my shoulders and lead and direct others and project to, collect and raise money to facilitate within the school, to make ends meet within raising the money. So it was definitely a great time for myself to perform a project on my own and coordinate with administration of the school to also help show how I've changed throughout my years at Xavier High School, and as well show the true brendan.cutuli to all, not only the administration, but my friends, my family, and everyone who really ever doubted me throughout my life. This opportunity actually led into my freshman year of college. I ended up deciding to go to Wentworth Institute of Technology in Boston, Massachusetts to study civil engineering, originally to play soccer as well. But I ended up quitting soccer because I decided that I needed to focus on my mental health. My mental health ended up being something that I needed to, really spearhead and focus on most. Throughout my youth, I used exercise, I used soccer and basketball as an escape for whenever I was facing a difficult situation. Many times, whether it was a friend who overdosed, whether it was a friend who ended relations with myself, whether it was a family member getting sick, my resort was to release any of that energy, stress, or relief out on the soccer field or the basketball court. I didn't have any other way of releasing any of this tension, this anger, and sports was a great way for me to do that. Then I came to college and I had my own responsibilities. I was on my own. I didn't have anybody to turn right away to in order when I was facing a difficult situation. At least I didn't have the resources yet. And I realized that I was not going to be able to learn how to deal with my own emotions, deal with my own mental health, if I was to still be playing soccer 6 times a day. It didn't make sense on top of focusing on civil engineering as my major, given how strenuous and extensive engineering majors are. I didn't want to provide the tight schedule, the stress that would come with having that all on my plate at once being a freshman in college. I decided it was best to quit the soccer team and focus on my own mental health moving forward. And this brought the, circular foundation of my trip as a senior in high school to Guatemala. This ended up, circling back because Xavier High School offered me the opportunity to help lead the senior high school trip that year while I was a freshman in college down to Guatemala to perform this trip again for the following year. I was so grateful that Xavier provided me this opportunity. I think I showed them how much I've changed and the willingness I had to help people behind me and help out those who maybe faced similar situations. I was able to show others around me that I had the ability to lead and communicate effectively. It was a time where I really learned that I have a lot of potential and I have the ability to create change with the lives around me. I enjoyed every minute of that second trip that I had to Guatemala. It was such an eye-opening experience seeing the communities again, communicating with the faculty and children of Kairos Christian School again. It brings such joy and light into my own eyes and soul as I even think about and speak about these children, faculty, and communities of Ciudad Vieja, of which I've experienced. Guatemala holds a special place in my heart, and I'm forever grateful for the experiences I've had there. This is definitely not the last of what I'll be doing within Guatemala. I think I still have a lot to give to the communities within Guatemala, and that'll be something that I'll continuously work within throughout the rest of my life. After this time is really when I began my own mental health transformation, when I really started to learn that I was most important. This didn't come with just the flip of a switch, though. This came due to a very negative and dark experience that I went through. It was a relationship that offered a different perspective in the way I had been living my life. Throughout this dark period, many thoughts that enrage within yourself, that curate within your mind, that offer some low points. I'm so grateful that I experienced it. I'm so grateful that I reached a new low, lower than what I had experienced in my prior years. No matter how hard and how treacherous it was, it led me to believe that there still is hope and there still are people out there that care for you, that love for you, that want to help you. It was a time where I felt like there was no coming back, that I didn't have anyone to reach out to. I didn't have anyone that I thought could get me out of this place. What I began to learn is that I am a product of my own environment, of who I surround myself with my routines, with how I treat myself. There are many different aspects of what I learned throughout this process. Many of them are basic lifestyle routines and habits that I changed throughout the course of my life in order to become a better person, become a better me. I wanted to change the way that I was viewed as a person, and more importantly, how I viewed myself. This led me to be a guest on my good friend Justin Nguyen and Gary, Michelle, their podcast, the Young and Dub podcast. I was one of the first guests on their podcast, which was an absolute pleasure, and I shared my own journey on my mental health and why mental health is such an important conversation to have. This then led the communication between Mark Metry and I to share our own experiences and our own answers to the way that we changed our mental health. We both faced mental health challenges throughout the course of our youth, and we both realized that there were many lifestyle routines that changed the way that our mind was effectively working throughout the day. We sat down and created a list of what was most beneficial in our life and how we can incorporate that to help others. This is where we created the organization called Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is an online resource that is free and accessible for anyone who has internet. We offer different principles such as meditation, emotional intelligence, physical health, gratitude, relationships, and self-awareness. These are all different principles that we thought you could best incorporate within your daily routines to create a better lifestyle to benefit your mental, physical, and emotional health. Metamorphosis offers different challenges within those principles throughout the day so you can try to incorporate them within your routines in order to benefit your own lifestyle. I will have the links towards our social media and our website within the show notes so you all can take a look at Metamorphosis and let us know what you guys think. I hope that can be a great resource for any of you to learn new lifestyle routines in order to positively impact your own mental health. Throughout creating Metamorphosis, I started to connect with a lot of very influential and powerful leaders and people who are creating a lot of change within the mental health field. This offered me the insights and drive to want to change more, to want to offer more resources to people around. This is why I created the Mental Insights podcast. I really thought that I was already meeting and connecting with a lot of great people, but I wasn't sharing their stories. This is where a podcast offers great insight because it allows you to simply have a conversation with someone which drastically changes the way someone can view themselves, the way that they approach their own life, and what they can do moving forward. So far, I've interviewed some incredible people that have offered some great tips and resources for my audience to effectively change the way that they manage their mental health, the way that they manage their substance abuse or addiction. It's been such a journey thus far, meeting others and providing resources to all of you. I wouldn't want it any other way. I wouldn't want to do anything else with my free time. It's been such a pleasure thus far doing the Mental Insights podcast. I'm forever grateful for the connections I've made and the connections I will continue to make moving beyond. I'd really like to thank you all for listening to this interview with myself. I think this offered a great insight and perspective into who I am and what I've gone through thus far, what I've created thus far, and you'll start to see a glimpse of what the future may entail. There's a lot of exciting things coming throughout my own life and throughout what I'll be able to provide others. I hope you all have enjoyed this conversation. I hope you all have enjoyed the Mental Insights podcast thus far. Let me know some guests that you've liked. Let me know if you have any questions for anything revolved around mental health or drug addiction. I'll make sure one of my guests clearly and concisely answers your question if I can't provide an answer right away. And yeah, just please like and continue to share this podcast, review it for me so we can continue to have new and reputable guests. I really appreciate all of your support thus far. It's been such an honor bringing you this podcast. So thank you all for listening to the episode number 24 of the Mental Insights podcast. This has been your host, Brendan.cutuli. Thank you.